Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the WayBack Movies Podcast, a show where we review the best and not so best of 80s and 90s cinema, because really, fuck the 2000s. My name is Steve, and with me on this crazy journey,
Justin.
Doctor. We're back.
Yes, sir.
And we are covering, as we said, we are continuing with our Rocky month. We are back with Rocky 2.
I think you mean Rocky I.
You're absolutely right. I do mean Rocky I. And
That's not it. That's not is it? I, Rocky.
Aye, Rocky. We're going on this, matey.
Well, we're gonna set sail and
Come on, Rock.
Cut to like them in character on the Love Boat, because I'm shocked that didn't happen.
The plane, Rock. The plane.
yeah, Mickey,
Because that happened, right?
Coming.
During
Wow.
like the late 70s, early 80s, people appeared as characters on other shows, right?
Yeah, well,
Maybe not the Love Boat or Fantasy Island or something, but like
they did, but it wasn't very often like you'd see a movie character show up on TV very often, I don't think.
just for comedy purposes.
I mean, I would love to see Rocky and Mickey on the Love
Gilligan's Island?
Boat or Gilligan's. Oh, Gilligan's Island would be great. You know, just at some point in time, Rocky just gets pissed off and just starts boxing fucking Gilligan all over the joint, or getting all over the professor of just like, hey man, you can build a TV, but you can't fix a boat. What's your problem, man?
He doesn't get extra hyper until next week.
Yeah. He never seems to go above a certain level in the first couple Rockies, but then, starting with Rocky 2 or 3, he gets fucking ape shit, which is great.
But yes, Rocky I.
So yes, we're covering Rocky I this week. We'll discuss as we go forward, but yeah, I don't know.
Jump right in.
Yeah, I guess we got nothing else. Let's jump in the WayBack machine, and again, this is going to be a long journey, so this is going to hurt a little bit, I think. But you never know. Now the WayBack machine's on the fritz here.
Dog and Pony Show.
Yeah, a little bit. I forgot to set some shit up, so bear with me here. All right, just setting the date back in there. So we're going to June 15th, 1979, which is, again, already breaking our rules. Because we always said we were only going to do one 70s, but who cares? It's Rocky. It's awesome. So, here we go. Oof. Jesus. That was a rough journey. My God.
I have this sudden urge to listen to just the Bee Gees.
I mean, I get that every week, but, clearly I'm a big Bee Gees fan if you've ever met me, as you can imagine.
The biggest.
Yes, like you read about, why is John Travolta everywhere? What the fuck's going on? Alright. So here we are, 1979. Rocky I. Let's do this thing. So, written and directed by Mr. Sylvester Stallone.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
His first directorial? Directorial?
Second directorial. I'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm in charge this time,
Produced by Robert Chardoff and Irwin Winkler again. Distributed by Universal Artists again. Box office of $200 million against a budget of $7 million. So they beefed it up quite a bit, actually.
Jesus.
Usual
See why
sequel
they
thing.
made $1 billion of these things.
Yeah, right? Like, no matter what money they threw at it, it would make more. So keep going. So the cast, much smaller cast this time, kinda, as far as anybody who did anything in this
More
movie.
truncated.
Very much so. Sylvester Stallone is Rocky Balboa. Talia Shire is Adrian Balboa. We'll get to that. Burt Young as Paulie Panino. Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed. Burgess Meredith as Mickey Goldmill. Tony Burton as Duke Evers. And Joe Spinelli as Tony Gazzo. That's the cast, people.
The main cast.
The main cast. There's really not much else that goes on as far as people with real screen time. And in all fairness, Tony Gazzo doesn't have that much either.
Yeah.
He's like literally this is as streamlined as you can get. In all fairness, so production on this flick. So the director John Avildsen would have come back, but he couldn't direct it because he was busy with pre-production on Saturday Night Fever. So,
Cue the Bee Gees and John Travolta.
Exactly. Big movie. So clearly he had other things to do. The studio originally didn't want Sylvester Stallone to direct it, since the movie he directed previously, because after Rocky was a big hit, they let him do whatever the fuck he wanted at this point. So he directed a movie called Paradise Alley, which failed miserably. And then, apparently, and I forgot to write it down, but there was another movie he starred in that also flopped. So they were like, what the fuck, man? Like, we hitched our wagon to you, and you kind of shit the bed. And he's like, I got this, just let me do it. The producers lobbied very hard for him, stating that the first one did so well because he was so hands-on with it, that he's just like, they're like, come on. Like, let the kid direct. And
I think it worked out.
I think so, too. However, John Avildsen did later say that he, one of the reasons he didn't want to actually come back was because he didn't approve of this story. Because the story was heavily rewritten. Because apparently the original plan was it was going to be a trilogy, and the idea that he had was that Rocky was going to become the mayor of Philadelphia. And there would be a scandal where Paulie steals from the treasury.
What the
and he liked that. And may I also point out that John eventually did come back to the Rocky series and collaborated on Rocky V, i.e. Rocky 5. Shows, doesn't it?
We'll get there.
Yeah. So, hey, John, stay in your lane, son.
Yep.
So the fight, there's not much for this movie, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
The main fight actually originally was supposed to take place in the Roman Colosseum, but they couldn't get it. Because, money.
Yeah.
That's an expensive
$7 million
place.
budget.
Yeah, that's an expensive-ass place. I'm guessing they didn't originally give them $7 million.
Yeah, it's probably not even that. It wasn't even that much.
Yeah, it was probably just
three,
like...
and then we'll
yeah,
beef it up
like,
for marketing.
We'll see what happens, Like, that's what happened with the first one. They literally made it for $1.1 million, and then they're like, this is actually pretty good. All right, we'll beef it up to $4 million for the marketing. And that's probably exactly what happened here. So, in the movie... Again, there's nothing. So in the movie, when Rocky has to switch, they have him switch to right-handed, so it throws Apollo off. That wasn't in the script. What happened was Sly was doing a bench press competition.
Like you do.
It's the 70s and the 80s. That's kind of a thing. And he tore his pec muscle, his left pec. So it had to have surgery. So he actually couldn't throw those crazy haymakers because his fucking pec was all fucked up.
Huh.
So that's why they did that, and that's why when they wrote it into the movie, and later on they're like, now switch, Rock, and
No, I'm not gonna trick. No tricks.
it's because he literally couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Talia Shire was supposed to actually be at the fight, but she was working on another movie at the time, so they actually wrote her in watching it at home, and then they filmed that several months after they filmed the fight scene, because when she was available again. So again, originally in the script there was a flashback to when Rocky met Mickey, and that's actually when we would learn that Rocky's real name is Robert. Stallone and the editors took over 8 months to edit the fight scene, because Stallone had such high standards that they just couldn't get it right.
Don't look right.
So you're not right. You gotta keep going. You gotta do more,
All right, Sly. Jesus. Fuck.
He started writing part 3 immediately as soon as this was done.
Well, because he knew.
Yeah,
I think he knew.
And again, he wanted this to be a trilogy. He had no plans for 4 and 5 and 6 and whatever.
So he knew 3
He knew 3 was going to be a
then...
thing, and his plan was to end it at 3. That didn't happen, and some would say it should have.
Again, we'll get there.
Yeah. There's basically, I think that's it. There's a couple things I got for during the flick. Actually, no, here we go. I'll just spill this one now instead of waiting. The running scene where he runs and the kids show up and everything like that?
Do you mean the bajillion children he found on the streets of Philadelphia?
800 children were used for that.
Yeah, I thought it was at least 1,000, so 800. Yeah, that sounds about right.
But people who live there and people who mapped it out geographically would judge that if the route that he took
from his
house to the Rocky Steps, as they're now called, would have been a run of about 30.2 miles, which is 4 miles longer than any marathon. So,
and near the end, he was just...
So, I'm going to say no, that didn't happen. So, yeah, that's a weird one.
We'll get there, though. Jesus.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there. Maybe I'll just fucking... You know what? I'll just burn the last thing I have so we can just enjoy. So, during the fight, the big fight, in between, if you remember... There's a scene where Apollo and Rocky are just, in between rounds, they're just like, hey, fuck you, blah, 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 and they're just, like, fighting, like, going at each other and, like, pushing each other and shit like that. They were mad. They were actually fighting.
Oh, yeah.
That was not part of it. That was not something that was planned.
Like, that was Carl Weathers and...
Yeah, and Carl
Stallone.
Weathers and Stallone fucking having at it, because what had happened, they didn't say who, but somebody hit somebody.
Like, for real.
Yeah, like, full-on fucking straight-up hit a couple times. And they were just pissed at each other. And just like, fuck you, no, fuck you, like, emotion getting to you. Like, ask
testosterone.
Ask any professional wrestler. This shit happens. And, and they were basically just going at it, and then when they were editing, in the 8-month editing process, they really just kind of liked it. It looked kind of good, and it kind of worked for the scene, so they just kept it in.
As a pull-apart?
Yeah, and that's literally all I have. There was nothing on this movie. I thought there was nothing for the original. There's nothing for this.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So, Rocky I. We
Yes.
start the first, I'd say, 5 good minutes of this movie
Oh, yeah.
are literally...
Recap.
The last film.
I'm not going to lie, I skipped through it.
Like, it's literally...
Yeah. It's the...
Like, with maybe some extra A&R fucking...
Yeah, they threw some
audio,
ADR stuff in
ADR
there, so there was more audio and shit like that, but I skipped it. It was basically 7 minutes of recap.
That's what I mean, yeah.
7 minutes of recap, and then the drive to the hospital while they do the credits. I skipped through it. I knew what it was. I didn't need it. I'm good.
So Rocky gets wheeled in.
Mm-hmm.
No, he walks in. He walks in his robe.
And then immediately he gets put on a wheelchair, because that's the law.
Yeah.
So.
People are hounding him, like, rematch. No, he's like, no, I'm officially retired.
No, I'm retired.
And then
This happens.
Apollo gets rolled in.
And I don't like it.
Italian Stallion!
I don't like it.
Rematch!
Yeah.
There's gotta be a rematch. But he covered it like, hey, you said there's gonna be no rematch.
Yeah, like you said there was going to be no rematch.
Well, I want a rematch. And
So,
like,
here's my way of justifying it.
sure.
So, Apollo Creed goes into the first fight
Yeah.
thinking it's going to be a joke.
Yes.
It's not a joke.
Yes.
They go 15 rounds, and he comes that close to losing.
Oh, yeah. There are people who
So,
say he lost.
in the heat of... Well, that's the whole theme of the
Yeah.
movie, too, right? Like, people are like, you lost that fight, which sparks why...
But that's where I lead into it. But say yours first.
So, in the heat of the moment, he's going to say there ain't going to be no rematch.
Yes.
Because he's like, well, fuck, this guy took me to 15 rounds. If there is a rematch, he could very well beat me, and I'm undefeated.
Which is what Duke brings up later.
So, while it's bullshit, that, like, ain't going to be no rematch, and that's the whole point of the end of the movie, as alongside, the whole love story between Rocky and Adrian. Like, there's going to be no rematch. He did what he had to do.
Yes.
He's retired.
Yes.
The whole theme of this movie is Apollo not letting it go.
Yes.
So I think once he got into the trainer's room and he calmed down, his cockiness came back. And it's just like, well, no, there has to be a rematch because I have to beat him.
I see what you're saying. But I think as far as the way the story played out and the way... Because I was mentioning this to you last week, before we even watched the movie. That moment between the two of, like, ain't gonna be no rematch, don't want one, is such a great moment. And this is the Alien 3 effect of you just shit on the whole point of the movie when you say that. I don't think it's necessary in this exact moment. Especially with what comes in a minute, which we'll get to, and I'll point it out. But you don't need Apollo fucking jumping down his throat in this scene. Because later on, we get plenty of justification. We get plenty of it because he's got the letters he won't let go. Yeah. He's got the media fucking getting on him. And that's when he jumps on it. They're not jumping here yet. They're just getting
think he's
information.
Doing it because there's cameras there.
No, I get that. And I understand that is
like
his character.
He's playing to the camera.
No, I get that. I get that.
In that moment.
But he could be like, when all the cameras and shit like that, he could literally still boisterous up and be like, yeah, you may have went the distance, but in the end, whose arm got raised? I'm the winner. He could boister that way and say, yeah, okay, you took me to the distance, but in the end, I'm still the winner. You're still a chump. Do it that way. And then later on...
I don't think even in the heat of the moment he would let his pride believe that he won that fight. Because he knows he won the fight, technically, but did he win the fight?
But that's later. They point all of that shit out later.
Yeah.
In this moment, you don't need it in the hospital. You don't need it, especially with the scene that comes up